Let's see. I'm trying to go live here. Am I live? Here I am live. This is Steve Loomis with Walking That Mile. Always something with this computer system running through Riverside and running onto YouTube, but I think I got it. So, I've been talking about the immigration stuff for the last number of days, and you know what? Everybody's talking about it, especially the shooting. Everybody's got an analysis from every angle, stop and rewind, one frame at a time. Lots and lots of not very intelligent people out there doing analysis. I saw one defense. He said he was a defense attorney. He's got like 2 or 3 thousand subscribers on YouTube. Defense attorney from Nevada who tried to give an analysis of the case as far as whether it could be proven self-defense or whether you don't have to prove self-defense. You have to prove that he was guilty of something. So, and he did a pretty poor job. And at some point, I might pick that apart because I think it's really, really bad. There's a couple other people who did some really good ones, and of course, everybody's skewed as far as like as soon as you start listening, you know which way they're leaning as far as being liberal or conservative. And I found one, and I'm blanking on their name because I want to give them a shout out. They're really good. They were really just matter of fact. They had some same opinion basically that I had as far as the totality of the whole thing, all the way down to he fired 3 shots, or at least that's what my understanding is. He fired 3 shots, and the first one went through the windshield. The other two likely went through the open side window, and of course there's some issues potentially with that as far as he would have been out of danger at that point. But I'll go into that at some other point. Everybody's analyzing that to death, and I'm just getting bored of it. I think people are getting bored of it, and so we'll move on to some other stuff. So transgender it, athletes in sports, Title IX is actually coming up. Supreme Court. There's 2 cases that are being heard, oral arguments tomorrow, which should be really quite interesting. If you have time to listen to some of it, it depends on who you like on the Supreme Court. There's some really thoughtful arguments. It's pretty interesting to hear them argue, and it's different than what I'm used to as far as in criminal law, in criminal court cases, as far as asking question. The attorneys ask questions, and then the witness answers. These guys do some more. They ask the questions, and then there's some back and forth. It's a little bit more open, a little bit more flexible. It's pretty interesting, but again, from my point of view, the conservative leaning judges really do a good job. And I'm, absolutely, you could say I'm biased, but man, I mean, it's also entertaining to listen to somebody like Jackson because she comes up with the most ridiculous arguments or perceptions of things, and so that can be entertaining too. But 2 cases come up. Let me pull them up here. The 2 cases are West Virginia v. BPJ, um, and the court is considering Title IX implications directly, along with equal protection questions. Title IX BPJ is I guess I don't have the specifics. I thought I had them spelled out here as far as what I think West Virginia. I think both of these are currently transgender athletes are being excluded from playing in the sport, participating in the sport that they identify at, gender that they identify as. Um, And so it's then the argument to basically throw out Title IX, which is what a lot of states have done. I live in Minnesota. Minnesota doesn't abide by Title IX at all, at least what Title IX originally was created for, as far as protection of women and females and girls in sports and in, their safe spaces, bathrooms, and locker rooms, and that kind of stuff. And so I'm hoping that this will be more of a sweeping when they make their decision, when they come back with their ruling. Uh, Apparently, they're guessing that it'll take until June, so 6 months before they actually make a decision. And some people say that this is not going to be totally sweeping, just, like I think it was Scotland middle of last year, late last year, came out with there are only two genders, and that really flipped everything back to what was normal, um, uh, uh, you know, up through I don't know Scotland's laws, but for many many years, 50, 60, 70 years, and so that was nice. They're saying that maybe this won't be as sweeping. Um, There'll be some nuances, potentially states being able to, remanded back to the states to make decisions, on a one-on-one situation based on, because there's other things involved. It's not just transgender athletes in sports, for example, in high school sports or college sports. It's also giving puberty blockers, the the care, they call it gender affirming care. Those of us who are against it think that you were affirmed at conception, honestly. And so it's just mutilation and really messing with your genetics there. So that's also out there. So all of those angles of this issue are, at least some of them, may be starting to be figured out at the Supreme Court level. Now, what I wanted to show you was there was some immigration stuff, and one piece I thought was a little, I don't know, heartening a little bit, and I can't find the actual video that I wanted to find. So this is in St. Cloud, Minnesota. If you're not from Minnesota, St. Cloud is like an hour and 10, an hour and 20 minutes north and west of the Twin Cities, Minneapolis and St. Paul. Oh, here. Oh, here the video looks like it starts out. So I think right in the middle of the picture here, I think that is a state representative of some kind from the St. Cloud area. Now, he's a Democrat. And I think there was also a city council member. I don't know. I saw just a little blip that showed this situation here. So hopefully I have it. But what gave me a little hope was that he's a Democrat and he is out here pushing. These are mostly Somalis in St. Cloud, and of course ICE is there trying to make some arrests, and he is keeping the Somali people away from any of the protesters, any of the Somalis away from the ICE agents. Let's see if this is the. Oh, sorry. He's right in the mix. Now you can see some other people too saying, "Hey, like we."
You guys need to go find another job, for real.
Okay, well there you go. So that was a little bit there. There was another. There was a city council member, I believe, that was also out there doing the exact same thing, and that's in St. Cloud. That's where I'm from. That's my hometown. So I was glad to see that it's a mess still. They have a huge population of Somalis. I haven't been back for a long time. They have a huge population there as well. Of course, some of them are illegal and they're going to get picked up by ICE, and that was a mess. But the representatives in that area were out there keeping the peace. Um, Unlike the national attention that Minneapolis gets with chicken shit Jacob Fry, mayor of Minneapolis, um, Keith Ellison, Tim Walz, and all the, I mean, who, uh, just their inflammatory rhetoric. They're trying to ignite the tinderbox, and you can clearly see that they're, and again, I think the city council member, it may have been the man in the middle there because I think he's a Somali American doing the same thing, holding people back. And so it was nice to see that Democrats, even though I'm sure they disagreed with the enforcement, um, were there to keep the peace. So I thought that was pretty cool to see. So the next thing I wanted to show you is, so look at this uh, craziness. Talk about craziness. So here is a Care 11. I got it here. If I go full screen, does it? Okay.
I actually don't know kind of what's going on. So can you fill me in?
Yeah. So yesterday, we responded to a sighting of ICE that was in my neighborhood. And when we approached,
Okay, I have to stop you right there because I noticed in the comments of the YouTube video of this same thing, this is Care 11 in Minnesota, you responded to, these are not law enforcement officers, okay? So when you talk about responded, you talk about people with their whistles and honking their horns and that kind of stuff. Now, I don't know who these two people are. I don't know if this is a man or a woman, and I don't mean to be offensive here. I don't know if this is a couple or if this is brother and sister, husband and
that
wife. I don't know.
situation, we were following behind two ICE vehicles. ICE agents got out of the cars. They sprayed pepper spray into the vent of my car.
That's a nasty trick.
And after that, proceeded to come back, break our windows, take us out of the car.
Okay, so come on. If they're breaking your windows, then you obviously have the doors locked. Okay? They pepper sprayed you through the vents because you didn't open your doors. And why are they stopping you? You both look like white Americans. He apparently has a Hispanic last name, and so likes to talk about that in this video. But they're interfering, they're obstructing, guaranteed. They were arrested for that. And a lot of people are like, oh, they can't detain U.S. citizens. They can if you're obstructing. They absolutely can. That would be silly for them to be their hands to be tied where they can't do any sort of law enforcement action against U.S. citizens, especially in this case when we know that the crazy woke liberal, mostly white woke women, childless white woke women, let's be honest, do this kind of stuff where they're gonna, it's like, don't you have jobs? Don't you have something else you should be doing during the day? All of these ICE agents, this is their job. So they're getting paid to do this. This is why they're out there doing this. That's how they feed their families. But they wouldn't break your windows and pepper spray you through the vents if you open the doors. So Care 11, I'm sure, is extremely left leaning. Obviously, the host here is extremely left leaning. So they get ripped out of the car because they're not complying. So they get brought to a detention center, and it's woe was me. Like, a detention center is terrible place.
And arrest us.
Yeah.
They put us into 2 separate cars. When I was in the car that I was in with ICE agents, they immediately started taunting me, making fun of me, taking pictures of me, calling me ugly, all around, just trying to kind of like humiliate me. And then about 2 minutes into our ride, the driver, the ICE agent that had pepper sprayed into the vents of my car, said, "You guys got to stop obstructing us. That's why that lesbian bitch is dead."
There you go.
And
oh yeah, and again, these two, whether they're a lesbian couple or not, I don't know. These two are doing exactly that. They're obstructing, and of course they can say whatever they want. So the ICE agents aren't there to defend themselves. It's not illegal to say that stuff. It would be nasty if they did say that stuff. But being a 20-year cop, this type of rhetoric from somebody who gets arrested, who is clearly in the wrong, and then wants to put it back on the arresting officers, and the only thing that they can say is like, they were made fun of me, and they took pictures of me. Well, they probably took pictures of you to document the fact that they arrested you. And did they make fun of you? I don't know. They could have. Absolutely, they could have. Nobody is there to refute that. So again, you can say whatever you want, but if you're following law enforcement, ICE around, blowing your horn, blowing your whistle every time that they need to stop and attempt to make an arrest, it's obstruction. And then when they asked you to get out of the car, just like what happened to Renee, they asked her to get out of the car. She refused and drove away. These two look like they refused but locked the doors. And then they go on to complain about, they had to pound on the door to ask for food. They had to pound on the door to ask to go to the bathroom. They were, locked in like a gen pop kind of thing, like probably like what you would see on a movie. Everybody, like a big holding cell. I don't know if they do that or not. We don't do that. Everybody's separated when we take people into jail, especially because they're usually high or drunk or something. You never know what's going on with them. So they said that they had to pound on the door to use the bathroom, pound on the door to get food, and they were detained for 9 hours, which is probably right. Who knows how many people they've arrested and have to go through the booking process. So it takes a while. The booking process itself takes a while. And then if you've got 20 or 30 people in front of you, it's going to take a while. So I thought this was interesting. Care 11, taken by ICE. You can watch the rest of that if you want on your own. I'm not going to show the rest of that. And then the other thing I wanted to show you is, unfortunately, here's a VFW yesterday. This is yesterday. Here's a VFW. I gotta share this with you. Getting better at sharing. Okay. This is a VFW, and they have the address. It's in Dinkytown in Minneapolis. Yesterday, ICE agents tried to come in there. Looks like they were using the bathroom. Whether they were actually going to try and sit down and eat or not. You would think it's the VFW, right? Veterans of Foreign Wars. So military people.
Take off your mask! Take off your mask!
Un-American pieces of shit.
Fucking cowards.
Fucking Nazi piece of shit.
Fucking cowards. Fuck out of here.
Isn't that crazy? It's pretty, I think that's pretty crazy for people who are patronizing a VFW. You can see Gunther Eagleman is the one who posted that here. I think you can see that. Can you still see that? Yeah, okay. But in the notes, they got it. There it is right there. VFW in Dinkytown. There's the address, Lindale Avenue. And I don't know much about this, so I learned the VFW, which makes sense, has to be owned by somebody who was in the military and was a veteran here. As a 35-year VFW Gold Legacy Life member and former post commander, I request you look into this allegation. So VFW headquarters, this guy, Roland 6. I request you look into this allegation. If true, you must bring the entire officer structure up for review in the context of violations of the National Charter. This is not a good look on the organization. So there you go. Somebody said this is a non-veteran owner run by a woke non-veteran. I did not know this was possible. This guy's family served, not him. He is a legacy, but they allow him to be president. So that's from Bird Extinction Patriot. There you see right there. So there's that. And then, of course, the next thing I want to show you is look at this. I like the Somali fraud stuff, just like the Somali fraud, but fraud in general in Minnesota, Medicare fraud, autism centers fraud, just goes on and on and on. And here is the most recent thing that I have seen is that you can see it right here. Minnesota reportedly intercepted $700 million in cash allegedly being smuggled out of the country by Somali couriers, far above the $10,000 legal limit. This again is by Nick Shirley and David Wheaton, who dug this up. And they said, here, let's play.
We're going to turn our attention back to the Somali fraud investigation. As we've discussed before, authorities have discovered suitcases containing hundreds of millions of dollars in a Minnesota airport. Now, in the meantime, Republicans are working to cut funding for Somali-led organizations with alleged ties to the massive fraud scandal. Now, as the FBI pushes forward with its own investigation, one key question arises. What does accountability even look like in this case moving forward? So joining us now to talk about all of this and more is New York Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. Congresswoman, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Great to be on with you too. What a crazy time we're seeing here, aren't we?
Absolutely insanity. And I know oversight in the House is looking into these fraud allegations, but I wonder if it's even bigger than we have uncovered thus far. The $700 million in cash going out of the airports there. I have a feeling we are still just scratching the surface.
Yeah, it looks really bad and obviously very alarming to see that this U.S. cash has been legally going through our airports. And of course, there is a requirement of reporting if you're going to carry more than $10,000. There's a reporting requirement, but I think a really interesting part about this is if, isn't it going to be a little suspicious when you start seeing 10,000, 100,000, millions, and now, more, as John reported earlier?
So it's legal. You just have to report it. So this other guy here, who we'll talk in just a second, will tell you that they weren't hiding it. They weren't trying to smuggle it. They weren't strapping it to their chests and stuff. It was in suitcases, and they were declaring it I got $1 million in U.S. currency in my bag, and I'm going to Somalia.
More money that goes through JFK goes through the Minneapolis airport. You know something's wrong there. And I think
She said, I cut it off there. She said that more money, more this type of money, courier money, goes through the Minneapolis airport than the JFK airport.
something that's very interesting that we impose on banks is that banks are required under banking law to require and file and keep track of what they call suspicious activity reports. This is something I think we need to do now when we see the large amounts of U.S. cash, and it's always U.S. cash. I mean, you're not going to see, Chinese yen or anything else going through there. And U.S. cash is king, and we need to certainly have this type of cash exchange reported. It's interesting because you see all this illegal immigration we've had over this time. And by the way, most of those Somalis that are in Minnesota probably came through a refugee program, and probably many of them are already legal American citizens. So suspicious activity reports, some kind of accounting for cash, I think would really be helpful. I'm looking at ways that we might be able to do this so that we could actually look at what's going on. Banks are.
This guy goes on. He goes on to say, like, Minneapolis is 99 times what JFK is as far as the amount of cash they're going through.
So legal aliens, by the way, legal residents in the United States, but move money out of the country, remittance payment centers, and of course these cash couriers like the ones that we're working out of the Minneapolis airport. Is there any thought in Congress to requiring that a remittance payment business or a cash courier ascertain and make sure that before they move money, the person that they're moving money from out of the United States is a lawful resident or citizen?
Yeah, I think that should be a requirement. And also they should have some kind of certification that you are a person that we can trust, our intelligence forces have already vetted, that you can be carrying these huge amounts of cash back and forth to other countries. And I don't think those types of laws are in place. And I think that's a really good way to start having accountability and also tracking where this cash leaving the United States is going. And look what it would have led to had we paid attention to this over the last 10 years and what you reported earlier on.
So they talk about how, and I went through some training, just some basic training, not basic training like as in military type training, just like 101, cash 101, where countries like Somalia, like they just don't have the infrastructure to wire and do all that kind of stuff, apparently. Or the people who are here don't have the, whatever, don't have bank accounts. Obviously, it's all sounds suspicious to me when I talk it out now, but they don't have a way of sending money except they send cash. Like if they're going to send it back home, we hear about Mexicans doing that when they come, into the United States, they work and they send a bunch of money home. And the people who do that in Somalia, they send cash. Well, I think what they do is they actually typically go through a courier. So they go to somebody whose job it is just to send money, and then they give them the cash, and then they wire it. But I know that it's a little bit more complicated because of the infrastructure in Somalia. Not that I think it's extremely suspicious that they're sending this much cash. If you're sending $1,000 to your family because you make so much more in the United States than they do, that's one thing. It's your money as long as you're obtaining it legally and it's not through benefits of some kind, then I don't see a problem with that. But when it's these huge amounts of money, obviously it's going to nefarious things. It's probably, right in line with all of this fraud. This is the end. This is the other end of it where it's getting sent, it's getting gobbled up in Minnesota and then it's getting shipped out. And of course, some of that is going to terrorist organizations and luxury vacations for people when we now have a $5 billion deficit. Thank God Tim Walz is stepping down and is not stepping down, but is not running again, and may step down. It'd be interesting if he stepped down, how that process would work. If you listen to Walter Hudson, if you don't, he's from the Minnesota. He is a state representative for Minnesota and has been for a couple of years. He's a very good person to listen to he's a Republican. As far as all of this stuff, he's in there having these discussions on the front lines as far as this stuff. He's also very well spoken. He's very easy to listen to. He describes things very well. And just, him talking about all of these different things. One specifically, if Walz were to step down, who would be in place? I guess you probably just would wait until the election, unless there's a special election. That would be pretty short notice, but maybe. But that the Democrats are going to put up another person, maybe Amy Klobuchar, and she, is better, but she is in lockstep with the Democrats and all the issues that they've had. So I don't know whether a lot of things would change, and that was his concern. That we know that not a lot is going to change in that party. Therefore, not a lot is going to change in the state unless we can get a Republican in there with common sense and change some of this stuff around. One of the things as far as the whole transgender issue that is coming before the Supreme Court soon, tomorrow, in fact, is the fact that, is that we have that same issue in Minnesota. Keith Ellison has sued the Trump administration as soon as the Trump administration, as soon as Trump said that there were only two genders, as soon as he got into office, he said there were only two genders, and tried to cut funding for public education if states were allowing gender affirming care and if they were allowing boys to participate in girls' sports. And of course, Keith Ellison immediately filed a lawsuit with a bunch of other Democrat attorney generals of other states. So, but that's the final thing here is that Keith Ellison and Keith Ellison and Jacob Fry and the mayor of Minneapolis.
Essence, a federal invasion of the Twin Cities and Minnesota, and it must stop. The deployment of thousands of armed mass DHS agents to Minnesota has done our state serious harm. This is, in essence, a federal invasion of the Twin Cities and Minnesota, and it must stop. The deployment of thousands of armed mass DHS agents.
No, it's just a short clip there. So they are suing. They are suing the Trump administration to try and stop them, try and stop DHS, ICE from this surge, this enforcement surge that they're doing. So he's saying it's an invasion, that it's a violation of the 4th and the 10th Amendment. I don't know. The man just likes to file lawsuits against Trump. I wish all these guys would put all this effort, Mary Moriarty, Keith Ellison. I wish you would put that effort into trying these criminals, these rapists, especially the rapists. For whatever reason, they seem to get a pass. Now, some of them are Somali, and the rumor is that you guys are on the take for votes. Walter Hudson did a piece the other day, I think it was yesterday, about why the Somali community in Minnesota cannot be Republicans. And he said because they want favors from whatever political party they are going to support, they immediately want favors. And he learned that when he started trying to build bridges with the Somali community, the leaders came forward and said, well, we need seats on the city council, and we need benefits, we need money, we need paid jobs, we need clout. And if we get that, then you get all the votes from our community. And Walter Hudson is a person who says, I can't be bought. And so he said he turned them down, and they went to the Democrats. And look at how Mayor Fry acts. Look at how Keith Ellison acts about the fraud, about the ICE. I wonder if they're concerned. Are there illegal immigrants here who have some dirt, who are maybe willing to talk and maybe want to talk to ICE, or will start by trying to talk to ICE about the behavior in the state of Minnesota and see if they can work a deal as far as ratting on people like Jacob Fry and Keith Ellison. I would say it's likely that those people are out there. And maybe that's part of, I think the speculation is that this base is what keeps people like Jacob Fry in power, because there are 75 to 100,000 Somalis in Minneapolis, and that number can keep him in power if he can continue to get them to vote for him. Hell, he was able to get them to vote for him and not Omar Fateh, who is a Somali American. So that says something. And then the fraud. And then the massive fraud that's been going on for many years that the Democrats obviously knew about. And so is that all connected? It likely is. There's kind of no way around that that's all connected. That's the cash that Walter Hudson is talking about that they were allowed to get. Here's the benefits that we will offer you as long as you continue to vote for me. And the Democrats are willing to do that. Tim Walz is willing to do that. Jacob Fry, either willing to do that or look the other way. Mary Moriarty won't prosecute people of color nearly as harshly as she will whites. And God, if you're a cop who has to make a split-second decision, she'll bring the weight of the world. She'll go out and find a DC law firm and spend almost $1 million on them to see if she can get you prosecuted, even though it was a justified shoot and everybody knew that. So they are suing to see if they can stop the federal government from enforcing federal laws in Minnesota. That's what it boils down to. They are going to try and get a federal judge to say they cannot enforce federal immigration laws this way, that this is too aggressive. I don't know. How does that even work? Apparently, it might go before a judge already tomorrow, already Tuesday. We'll have to wait and see. That's it for me. Thanks so much. I'm Steve Loomis with Walking That Mile. If you would subscribe, I would greatly appreciate it. If you would like this, I would absolutely, I would love to receive some communication. What I wanted to do with this is hopefully do a lot more interviews. Now, I'm always doing my podcasts at 12:30 and 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's hard to get somebody to do an interview with me at this time, but that's what I really want to do. But if you could subscribe and build up my subscriber base a little bit,